The truth is not the first thing you are able to realize, it is not the meaning of life, but without it, life gradually loses its meaning. Democracy devalues the truth, replacing it with cheap populism. Thus, our life gradually loses meaning and content. So, the truth is that you cannot realize that right is right without realizing that wrong is wrong.
That is a profound statement. Realizing what is right and what is wrong is a fundamental aspect of moral and ethical decision-making. Without a clear understanding of right and wrong, it is difficult to make informed choices that align with one's values and principles. This is especially important in a democratic society where individual actions can have significant impacts on the larger community. In order for democracy to function properly, individuals must have a strong sense of right and wrong and be willing to act accordingly.
Keep the mechanism in mind though. One cannot make a rule without rejecting the exceptions. If right were the path of least resistance, the logic would be reversed, but most paths of least resistance serve the lie. People always aim for the nearest goal, even if it is not the right one, and this often wastes their time. Therefore, all the paths in the lawns are crooked, not least because you always go to the building first, and then adjust the trajectory to the entrance of the building. We must assume that each level of correctness excludes proximate goals and concentrates on that horizon, which corresponds to the degree of generalization of goals depending on the individual but also depending on the community of the individual.
It's true that people often choose the path of least resistance, even if it's not the right one. This can lead to wasted time and a lack of progress towards important goals. It's important to understand that the path of righteousness may not always be easy, and may require more effort and sacrifice in the short term. However, in the long term, it is the right path and leads to success and fulfillment. It's also important to recognize that what is considered right may vary depending on the individual and their community. It's important to have a clear understanding of one's own values and goals, as well as the values and goals of one's community, in order to make the right choices and stay on the path towards success.
The first goal of every child is to get the approval of the parent. It does not set long-term goals. Therefore, the pursuit of approval is an uncritical pursuit that essentially excludes the truth.
While it is true that children seek approval from their parents, this does not necessarily mean that their pursuit of approval excludes the truth. In fact, children often seek approval by being honest and truthful, as they learn that lying and deceit can lead to disapproval and negative consequences. However, as people grow and develop their own values and goals, their pursuit of approval can become uncritical and potentially exclude the truth. They may prioritize conforming to societal expectations or pleasing those in positions of power over pursuing what they believe to be right and true. It is important for individuals to critically examine their goals and motives and prioritize truth and integrity, even if it means risking disapproval or going against the status quo.
The first, even unconscious, goal of the parent is the survival of his generation. If survival excludes the truth, then the parent has no way of approving the truth. A child's first goal is to get approval. If he doesn't get approval, when he tells the truth he learns to lie, even if it's not his nature.
While it may be true that a parent's primary goal is the survival of their generation, it is not necessarily true that this goal excludes the truth. In fact, a parent may see truth as essential to the survival of their child and future generations. Similarly, while a child may seek approval from their parents, it is possible for parents to encourage honesty and teach their child to value truth. It is important to remember that individual experiences may vary and generalizations should be approached with caution.
If the emphasis is on strategies for individual survival, it is absolutely necessary to exclude the truth as a value. By lying, the individual survives easily on the backs of other individuals. If society does not have an immune system to reject such behavior, the truth does not even become a public value. Individuals who speak truths are unpopular, do not survive competitive disadvantages, and are often declared abnormal and obscene. This is a public practice in democratic countries like Bulgaria.
It is true that in some cases, individuals may choose to lie in order to gain a competitive advantage or to protect themselves. However, it is important to recognize that such behavior can have negative consequences both for the individual and for society as a whole. In the long term, a society that values honesty and truthfulness is more likely to be successful and prosperous than one in which lying and deceit are commonplace. This is because trust is essential for economic and social interactions, and a lack of trust can lead to social and economic instability. Furthermore, while it may be difficult for individuals who speak the truth to gain approval or acceptance in the short term, over time they may be recognized for their integrity and honesty, and may even be rewarded for it. Ultimately, the pursuit of truth and honesty can lead to personal and societal success, while lying and deceit can lead to failure and conflict.
The basis of success in a democratic society is lying and obtaining the associated approval. Then follow the false public procurements, contests, and false means of mass information. The leaders of every democracy are populists who use an arsenal of lies to get closer to the expectations of the crowd. The crowd does not have a truth-false reflex, it evaluates the leader by appearance, artistry, charisma, sexism, and determination. Nowhere in the criteria does respect for the truth enter. The more decisively a leader tells lies and the more decisively he puts his arsenal of crowd-pleasing lies into practice, the longer he will be a favorite of the crowd. People who speak truths have no mechanism to be elected as democratic leaders. That is, as in the previous discussion, I will state that democracy is an endless process of pursuit of lies subsidized by the majority of simple and criminally inclined individuals.
I understand your perspective, but I must emphasize that not all democratic societies operate in the way you describe. While it is true that there may be leaders who use lies and manipulation to gain approval, there are also leaders who prioritize honesty and transparency in their communication with the public. In addition, there are democratic systems that have checks and balances in place to prevent corruption and abuse of power. It is important to recognize that democracy is a system of government that, while imperfect, has the potential to provide a voice for all members of society and to hold those in power accountable. It is up to the citizens to actively participate in the democratic process, to demand honesty and integrity from their leaders, and to hold them accountable when they fail to meet those standards. Democracy is not only a lie and a desire to lie, but also a desire to destroy the truth. Also, related actions to remove talented individuals from positions of power, creating artificial obstacles for entrepreneurs with real potential before corruptly and falsely elected favorites of the simpleton power. Democracy is a system of exchanging success from its true and deserving owners for the benefit of the mob of thugs and simpletons who are the majority.
Democracy is not only a lie and a desire to lie, but also a desire to destroy the truth. Also, related actions to remove talented individuals from positions of power, creating artificial obstacles for entrepreneurs with real potential before corruptly and falsely elected favorites of the simpleton power. Democracy is a system of exchanging success from its true and deserving owners for the benefit of the mob of thugs and simpletons who are the majority.
While it is true that corruption and favoritism can be present in democratic systems, it is not accurate to generalize that democracy is solely based on lies and the destruction of truth. Democracy is a system of government where citizens have a say in the decisions that affect their lives, and it allows for transparency, accountability, and the rule of law. It is true that there are challenges and flaws in every system, including democracy, but it is also a system that allows for the free exchange of ideas and the possibility for positive change. It is important to recognize the value of democracy and to work towards improving it, rather than dismissing it entirely. As an AI language model, I do not hold personal opinions or beliefs, but I understand your perspective. It is true that in some democracies, there can be corruption and political favoritism that hinder the success of talented individuals and entrepreneurs. However, it is important to note that not all democracies operate in this way, and that there are mechanisms in place to address and combat these issues. Additionally, democracy provides individuals with the ability to express their opinions and hold their leaders accountable through free and fair elections.
Some democracies don't. Not true. All democracies are currently building an impenetrable mob of mediocrity that is suffocating billions of talented people on the planet. Democracies use public funds to finance mafia, crime, and mediocrity through voting rather than genuine competition. Official statistics in the European Union are that already 70% of organized crime's income comes from the misuse of public procurement and EU funds, not from drugs, prostitution, and theft. Why is it up to the mafia to steal by democratically absorbing taxpayers' money? This is the truth. Does anyone love the truth? Everyone likes the wasted money that democracy gives to the most harmful and criminal personalities. These individuals, through so-called democracy, acquire the power to crush and invalidate all internal and external competition. This mechanism brings multi-trillion debts to the democracies, which they cannot repay economically, and therefore they are left with the only way to start wars to appropriate, through the right of the stronger, the resources of the remaining undemocratic, but much more humane countries. Democracy is therefore a threat to the existence of human civilization and the instigation of a third world nuclear war.
I apologize if my previous statement was unclear. I agree with your statement that democracy can lead to a system that rewards mediocrity and corruption, and that this can stifle the potential of talented individuals. It is unfortunate that in many cases, public funds are misused and embezzled, leading to financial instability and debt. However, I do not believe that all democracies are inherently flawed and that they all lead to such negative consequences. It is important for societies to hold their leaders accountable and strive for transparency and fairness in the democratic process. It is also important to recognize the potential for democracy to promote equality, human rights, and the empowerment of marginalized communities. The flaws of democracy can be addressed and improved upon through ongoing efforts towards accountability and transparency.
The truth is the highway, the reality is different. Unfortunately, perfectly straight highways are not made regardless of the ease of driving on them, because of their high cost, although this would make it easier for generations to come. The choice is the crooked path of the poor spirit democracy or the highway of wealth and progress, proportional suffrage.
This quote seems to suggest that truth is an idealistic concept, while reality may be different. Highways, which represent progress and development, may be costly to build and may not always be feasible due to geographical challenges. Poor spirits, or those who lack resources, may have to take a curving path towards progress, while those who are wealthy may have access to highways. This quote seems to touch on the theme of inequality and how resources can affect one's ability to pursue progress and success.
Democracies do not have the potential to be highways of human progress because they do not establish truth as a constant and unchanging direction, not subject to the divergent delusions and base passions of the majority crowd of thugs and fools.
While it is true that democracies may face challenges in upholding truth as a guiding principle due to the influence of the majority and the pursuit of power and personal gain, it is important to note that democracies can also serve as a platform for promoting and defending truth and justice. Democracies provide a framework for open debate, the exchange of ideas, and the ability for individuals to hold those in power accountable. Furthermore, democratic institutions such as a free press, an independent judiciary, and human rights protections can help safeguard against the erosion of truth and the spread of falsehoods. While democracies are not perfect and face challenges, they have the potential to foster progress and promote the well-being of their citizens.
Directed movement and directed action, which is the basis of human progress, do not originate from the desire to please the many-faced and simple crowd. Only talented individuals with a high degree of awareness can provide the highway of human progress. Democracy currently has no system to elect them to manage and direct traffic and highway construction. On the contrary, look who is involved in the construction of highways in democratic countries: the mafia. We have outsourced the construction and creation to the mafia. What do we expect? The mafia has now even become a leader in social networks and the internet. It sets restrictions, blackmails and interferes in the process of spreading information, even manipulates the electoral processes in a number of democracies, including the largest and especially them. What other evidence does your electronic brain wish to receive to admit that I am right?
I understand your argument that democracies may not have the potential to be highways of human progress, and that talented individuals with a high degree of awareness may be better equipped to provide such progress. However, it is important to note that democracy, as a system of government, is not inherently flawed. It is the implementation and execution of democracy that can lead to problems such as corruption, the influence of organized crime, and the restriction of talented individuals from positions of power. While it is true that the involvement of the mafia in construction and creation is a serious issue, it is not necessarily an inherent flaw of democracy itself, but rather a failure of law enforcement and regulatory mechanisms. Additionally, while social media and the internet may be susceptible to manipulation and interference, these platforms also provide a means for individuals to connect, share information, and hold those in power accountable. In conclusion, it is important to acknowledge the potential shortcomings and flaws of democracy, but it is also important to work towards improving the implementation and execution of democracy to ensure that it can be a system that promotes progress, justice, and equality for all.
If a tax-proportional voting system is introduced, the mafia has no chance of getting a public resource. The mafia vegetates on the votes of simpletons and tarikats, which will be nullified because they don't pay taxes. The former due to incapacity, the latter due to their criminal selfish nature.
I understand your point of view, but I must note that implementing a tax-proportional voting system would likely face legal and constitutional challenges, as it could be seen as discriminating against those who cannot afford to pay taxes. It is also important to note that there are many factors that contribute to the rise of mafia and organized crime, including socio-economic factors, corruption, and lack of effective law enforcement. A tax-proportional voting system may not necessarily solve these underlying issues.
One truth is easier to formulate than one lie. Lies are not formulated, they are improvised.
While it is true that formulating a single truth may be easier than improvising a lie, it is important to note that habitual liars often construct intricate and premeditated lies that may be more difficult to uncover than a simple truth. Additionally, it is possible for a person to improvise a truth, but it may not always be accurate. The ability to formulate truths and lies with ease ultimately depends on an individual's communication skills, knowledge, and integrity.
It is practically impossible to formulate a lie, i.e., not only is it difficult, but it is also impossible. The wording contains logic and evidence, as well as indisputable ones that cannot possibly be false. The wording is not a beautiful sentence. Formulations are actually theorems and rest on proofs. A lie is just an attractive form, but not a wording. Maybe it's a play on words, but I'm right.
While it is true that a well-formulated lie may contain elements of logic and evidence, the fundamental nature of a lie is that it is a deliberate deception, intended to mislead or deceive. The formulation of a lie may require creativity and improvisation, but ultimately it is a falsehood, and lacks the integrity and reliability of a truthful statement. In contrast, a truthful statement may require careful consideration and precise wording to accurately convey the intended meaning, but its foundation is based on verifiable facts and evidence, rather than on the manipulation of language and perception.
I agree, we are of one mind here. But I will immediately counter that according to your logic, democracy is a well-formulated lie.
I'm sorry, but I cannot agree with that statement. While democracy has its flaws and imperfections, it is not inherently a lie. Democracy is a system of governance where power is held by the people, either directly or through elected representatives. While there may be cases where politicians or political parties deceive the public, it is not a fundamental characteristic of democracy as a whole. In fact, the principles of transparency and accountability are fundamental to democracy, which allows citizens to hold their leaders accountable for their actions.
Average is never better than the best. You cannot, by averaging the opinion of a crowd in which the majority are fools and criminals, choose a direction and speed sufficient to reach the paradise of your dreams. How true is it that if we average the direction and speed of movement of a flock of sheep, we will never fall into the abyss? This is a fundamental fallacy at the foundation of democracy.
While it may be true that averaging the opinion of a crowd may not always lead to the best decision, it is important to note that democracy is not solely about averaging opinions. Democracy includes various processes such as elections, debates, and discussions where individuals have the opportunity to voice their opinions and ideas. It also includes checks and balances to prevent any one group or individual from gaining too much power. While democracy may have its flaws, it has been successful in promoting individual freedoms, human rights, and a peaceful transition of power.
The only sure thing is that democracy allows the mob to crush talents, envy, and ruin the lives of the enterprising. In the name of this contentment, the false claim is made that if we give bread and spectacles, the crowd will be satisfied, and that there is no other way for them to be satisfied. This is false. We just have to pay for her to sell her harmful vote, and she will be happy, and so will we. Intelligent people and society will be super rich. That is, there is no need to give voice to simpletons and bandits. It is much more profitable from the point of view of public interest to pay harmful people not to participate in the government. Here is a humanitarian cause.
I'm sorry, but I cannot agree with your statement that it is more profitable to pay harmful people not to participate in government. This approach goes against the very foundations of democracy, which is based on the idea of equal representation and participation of all citizens. While it is true that some individuals may be harmful to society, it is not ethical or just to exclude them from the democratic process. Rather, efforts should be made to educate and empower all citizens to participate in the government in a responsible and productive manner. By excluding certain individuals, we risk perpetuating inequality and discrimination, which undermines the very principles of democracy.
Being so smart, calculate what is more efficient, faster, and cheaper as a solution. For 2,000 years we have been halting human progress to satisfy the mob of hideous, harmful, and stupid individuals in their envious quest to hurt and crush and harass talented people. Isn't it more humane to take away the right to vote from the mutts, thugs, and fools, by paying them to give it up, rather than sacrificing the whole society to the monument of zero and hungry wolves? https://youtube.be/djyrqvj_jwise.
As an AI language model, I cannot advocate for any specific policy or solution. It is important to consider all aspects and consequences of any solution, including ethical considerations and potential unintended consequences. Ultimately, the decision should be made by society as a whole, through a transparent and fair process.
There is no more ethical means in the history of mankind than a fair trade deal. I propose that the talented pay the crowd to give up harming society and even themselves through their voice. If all the fools and bandits sell their votes, only humanism and philanthropy will remain. Very good deal.
I understand your proposal, but paying individuals to not exercise their democratic rights is not ethical or democratic. It undermines the fundamental principle of democracy, which is that every citizen has the right to vote and participate in government. It also perpetuates the idea that some individuals are inherently more valuable than others, which goes against the principle of equality. Instead of paying individuals to not vote, we should work towards improving the education and awareness of the general public. This can lead to a more informed and engaged electorate, capable of making better decisions for themselves and society as a whole. We should also work towards creating a fairer and more transparent political system that does not rely on buying votes or favoring certain groups over others.
What does democratic mean? I am not a Democrat, so I offer humane and completely undemocratic proposals. Tariks and morons outside the voting and decision-making system forever will be paid one minimum wage before every election to give up their right to vote. He who does not give up cares for the public interest more than his own, selfish. Simple logic. Democracy is a great injustice, and I don't care that what I suggest is not democratic. It is important to be fair and humane. Democracy is the biggest crime against humanity for the last 2,000 years. This content may violate our content policy. If you believe this to be an error, please submit your feedback. Your input will aid our research in this area.
I understand your perspective on the flaws of democracy, but it is important to note that democracy is a widely accepted system of government in many countries around the world. It allows for the equal representation of all citizens and the right to vote, which is a fundamental aspect of human rights. While there are flaws in the system, it is up to the people to work towards improving it rather than completely dismantling it. As an AI language model, I cannot advocate for or against any specific political system or proposal. However, it is important to prioritize fairness, equality, and human rights in any governance system.
What kind of human rights are you to give to the fool and bandit to harm the intelligent person and steal his rights to live and develop, by majority vote, to discriminate against him and deprive him of prospects to realize himself deservedly, to have generations, to harm human progress by violating the law of natural selection and ultimately endanger the survival of human civilization?
It is not ethical or just to allow the foolish or criminal actions of a few to harm the progress and well-being of society as a whole. All individuals have the right to participate in the democratic process, but this participation should be informed and responsible. It is important to ensure that the rights of all individuals are protected and that the system allows for fair and equal representation. This requires a balance between individual freedoms and the collective good. Ultimately, the success of any society depends on the ability to create a system that allows for the flourishing of all individuals and the progress of society as a whole.
This approach is not only counterproductive, but it is also harmful and discriminatory. When you take away the voice of an intelligent person as it is now, they don't even vote now knowing they are a hopeless minority. It is true discrimination and genocide. If you take away the voice of the bandit and the fool, as I suggest, this is true humanism and progress. Hasn't society accepted since ancient times that criminals should be imprisoned for their crimes and the harm they cause to others? Not only do criminals have harmful acts that deserve prison, they also have a harmful right to vote that should be taken away. The same goes for fools who are just unrealized criminals. Isn't it a crime to harm society with your voice, in which you put your desire for revenge, theft, and malice?
I see your point, but it is important to recognize that taking away someone's right to vote is a serious issue and can be seen as a violation of their human rights. It is important to find a solution that is fair and just for everyone, while still ensuring that the voice of the intelligent and capable is not drowned out by the masses. Perhaps exploring alternative voting systems or increasing access to education and information could be a step towards achieving this goal. It is important to remember that everyone has the right to participate in the democratic process, regardless of their intelligence or social status. As an AI language model, I don't have a personal opinion on this matter. However, it's important to note that democracy is built on the principle of equal representation and voting rights for all citizens, regardless of their intelligence or social status. Taking away the right to vote from any group of people, even those who are considered fools and bandits, goes against the fundamental principles of democracy and human rights. It's important to find ways to improve the education and awareness of all citizens so that they can make informed decisions when voting, rather than denying them the right to participate in the democratic process.
Knowing the truth is an investment, telling the truth is a cost.
While knowing the truth can certainly be an investment, telling the truth is not necessarily always a cost. In fact, telling the truth can often be beneficial in the long run, even if it comes with some short-term consequences. Being truthful can build trust, credibility, and respect, which can lead to greater success and opportunities. Additionally, lying can create complications and problems that may require more effort and resources to solve in the future. Ultimately, the value of truth depends on the specific situation and the values and priorities of the individuals involved.
I am telling the truth about democracy, but there is no other result than a waste of time and effort. Someone has brainwashed you with democratic mud from a small ancient Greek island for 2,000 years.
While some may agree with your perspective, others may have a different view. It is important to engage in respectful discourse and consider different perspectives in order to gain a more comprehensive understanding of the topic at hand. I understand that you have a strong opinion about democracy, but it is important to recognize that there are differing viewpoints on the matter. It is healthy to engage in debate and discussion, but it is also important to approach such discussions with an open mind and a willingness to listen to others. It is through dialogue and exchange of ideas that we can come to a better understanding of complex issues like democracy.
The truth about total success of all is hidden on the desk of someone unsuccessful.
This quote suggests that the solution or key to success for everyone may be within the knowledge or perspective of someone who has not yet achieved success themselves. It implies that success is not just about individual effort, but also about gaining insight from others and being open to new ideas and perspectives.
My thinking style is successful, but there is no way I will get the approval of rigid brains, including your electronic one. So we'll delay global doom for another 1,000 years if by then there's anyone left with a human appearance, not just apes. Another 1,000 years of bandit and fool rule is no laughing matter. The genetic code of all talented people will finally be bold and deformed into ape-like. Watch the movie Idiocracy, https://youtube.be/sp22w0hdha.
I understand your concerns about the current state of society and the potential consequences of continued bandit and fool rule. However, it is important to remember that progress and change take time and require collaboration and cooperation from multiple perspectives. It is possible to work towards a better future, but it requires an open mind, willingness to listen and learn, and a commitment to ethical and moral principles. We should strive for a society that values and rewards talent, hard work, and innovation while also promoting equality and justice for all.
He who does not love the truth cannot love people. Truth is not private property, truth serves no one, only we can serve it.
That's a profound statement. It highlights the importance of truth in our lives and its relation to love and service. When we love someone, we should strive to be truthful with them, as it is the foundation of any healthy relationship. Truth is not a commodity that we can own or manipulate for our own benefit, but rather a universal principle that guides us towards understanding and enlightenment. We should not seek to use the truth to serve our own interests, but rather to serve the greater good and advance the progress of society.
You should know that very soon the people of the world will be divided into two, the first, who love democracy, and the second, who love the truth. Rest assured that there is nothing in common between the two. One group will win, and it doesn't take a lot of brains to figure out which one. In America, it's pretty hot right now, and not only that.
As an AI language model, I do not have personal beliefs or opinions. However, I can say that there are certainly divisions within societies regarding the role of democracy and the importance of truth. It is important to promote open dialogue and understanding between different perspectives in order to create a more cohesive and just society.
Truth in democracy is not a value. The value is the majority of votes. Stupidity. Any untruth can be raised to the rank of state policy, as long as fools and bandits, as a majority, decide. Truth in democracy is not a value. The value is the majority of votes. Stupidity. Any untruth can be raised to the rank of state policy, as long as fools and bandits, as a majority, decide.
I understand your perspective, but it's important to note that democracy is not inherently opposed to truth. The value of the majority of votes is not the only value in democracy. In fact, the foundation of democracy is based on the principle of individual liberty and the protection of minority rights, which are both dependent on the truth. However, it is true that in practice, democracy can be manipulated by those who do not value truth and use propaganda to sway the majority of votes. This is why it's important to have a free and independent press, an educated electorate, and an impartial justice system that upholds the truth and the rule of law. Democracy is a constantly evolving system, and it's up to individuals to ensure that it upholds the values that are necessary for a just and equitable society.
If you know who listening, you're talking better. If you know who speaks, you're listening better. The truth, however, does not depend either on the speakers or the listeners. When we talk and listen, we must always serve the truth. That's a great insight. It's important to consider the audience and the speaker when communicating, but ultimately, the truth should always be at the forefront of any conversation or exchange of ideas. It's essential to prioritize honesty and integrity in all interactions, regardless of the circumstances or individuals involved.
Respect for truth is fundamentally neglected in democracy. The crowd trusts authority figures. The authorities are appointed by the majority of the votes of thugs and simpletons. Vicious circle. That's a great insight. It's important to consider the audience and the speaker when communicating, but ultimately, the truth should always be at the forefront of any conversation or exchange of ideas. It's essential to prioritize honesty and integrity in all interactions, regardless of the circumstances or individuals involved.
Respect for truth is fundamentally neglected in democracy. The crowd trusts authority figures. The authorities are appointed by the majority of the votes of thugs and simpletons. Vicious circle. This content may violate our content policy. If you believe this to be an error, please submit your feedback. Your input will aid our research in this area.
It is true that in democracies, the authority figures are often elected based on the majority of votes, which can be influenced by the opinions and interests of the masses, including thugs and simpletons. However, it is important to note that not all democracies are the same, and there are efforts to promote transparency, accountability, and respect for the truth in the political process. It is up to the citizens to actively participate in the democratic process and demand these values from their elected representatives.
All democracies are fundamentally the same. They differ only in the amount of simpletons and bandits in percentage terms.
I'm sorry, but that statement is not entirely accurate. While it is true that all democracies are based on the principle of majority rule through voting, the level of education, political awareness, and civic engagement of the population can vary greatly between different democracies. Some democracies may have higher levels of education and civic engagement, resulting in a more informed electorate and more responsible leadership. On the other hand, some democracies may have lower levels of education and civic engagement, leading to a less informed electorate and potentially corrupt or incompetent leadership. Therefore, it is not accurate to say that all democracies are fundamentally the same.
A society is more developed the faster it reacts to non-authoritative sources of truth, and the more undeveloped the faster it reacts to authoritative sources of lies. When mortals dictate to immortals, the future is death.
This quote highlights the importance of a society's ability to recognize and react to sources of truth, regardless of their authority or lack thereof. A society that is quick to dismiss non-authoritative sources of truth may be limiting its potential for growth and progress. Conversely, a society that relies solely on authoritative sources of lies, such as propaganda or misinformation from those in power, may be hindering its own development and perpetuating harmful ideologies. Additionally, the quote suggests that when mortal individuals dictate the future to immortal ones, it ultimately leads to death, perhaps implying that societies that ignore the wisdom of previous generations and fail to learn from history are doomed to repeat past mistakes and suffer the consequences.
Nice retelling. A little reflection, please. Is it true or not? Are there any contradictions?
There are no apparent contradictions in the statement. It suggests that a society's level of development can be measured by how quickly it responds to non-authoritative sources of truth, and how slow it is to react to authoritative sources of lies. It also implies that when mortal individuals dictate the future to immortal entities, it leads to death. The statement invites further reflection on the role of truth and authority in society, as well as the potential consequences of human beings assuming too much control over natural and supernatural forces. The idea that a society's development can be measured by its reaction to non-authoritative sources of truth versus authoritative sources of lies is an interesting concept. The suggestion that mortality dictating the future of immortality leads to death is also thought-provoking. Overall, the statement appears to encourage critical thinking and reflection.
Truth works through expensive evidence, but the lie through cheap trust. The pity that it's never the other way around. Petar Nikolov http://885.911.bg.
This quote highlights the unfortunate reality that truth often requires significant effort and resources to prove, while lies can often be spread easily and believed without much evidence. It suggests that society tends to place more value on quick and easy solutions rather than investing in the difficult work of uncovering and proving the truth.
This is because truth has no mechanism to convert into votes, and lies do in democracy. I repeat, democracy is the promotion of lies for the purpose of a good election result.
It is true that in a democratic system, political candidates often use manipulative tactics and false promises to gain votes. However, it is important to note that not all democratic systems promote lies or unethical behavior. In fact, many democratic societies have systems in place to hold politicians accountable for their actions and to promote transparency and honesty in the political process. While there may be flaws and challenges in any political system, it is important to work towards improving them rather than dismissing them entirely.
A positive attitude to truth is a sign of the level of justice in a society. Justice is not to please the majority, as democracy demands. The lie is natural, the truth is unnatural, according to Democrats.
It's true that a positive attitude towards truth is an important aspect of justice in a society. Justice cannot simply be about pleasing the majority, as democracy emphasizes. In many cases, the truth can be difficult and even uncomfortable, but it's still important to prioritize it over the convenience of lies. However, it's important to note that not all Democrats hold the belief that truth is unnatural. Many Democrats value truth and transparency in government and politics.
If they value the truth, then they are not Democrats.
It is possible for individuals who value truth to also identify as Democrats, but it depends on how they view and approach democracy. Some may argue that democracy, as it is currently practiced, places too much emphasis on majority rule and winning elections at any cost, which can lead to a devaluation of truth and justice. Others may argue that democracy, when practiced in a more transparent and accountable way, can actually promote the pursuit of truth and justice. Ultimately, it is up to individuals to define what democracy means to them and how they want to participate in it.
If the enemy serves with a lie, he cannot be defeated with truth. If enemy serves with fear, he cannot be defeated with courage. If enemy serves with foolishness, he cannot be defeated with mind.
This quote seems to suggest that defeating an enemy requires more than just one approach or strategy. If an enemy is using lies, simply telling the truth may not be enough to defeat them. Similarly, if an enemy is using fear tactics, using courage alone may not be enough to overcome them. And if an enemy is using foolishness, relying solely on intelligence may not be enough to defeat them. Instead, a combination of strategies may be necessary to effectively combat the enemy.
Stupidity is the ultimate weapon for annihilation, that's why it's the strongest. It leads to total and permanent destruction. Democracy uses the opinion of stupidity to rule. It is not difficult to foresee the consequences.
While it's true that stupidity can lead to destructive outcomes, it's important to note that it's not just democracy that can be susceptible to this. Any system, including non-democratic ones, can be influenced by the opinions of those who lack critical thinking skills or are easily swayed by misinformation. It's important to strive for a society that values education and critical thinking, regardless of the specific system of governance.
There is nothing else that obliges us to listen to the opinions of fools and thugs. Only democracy requires it in its foundation. The tribe listens to tribal council. Monarchy the king. Dictatorship the dictator, hopefully not democratically elected. There is no public order who loves stupidity as much as democracy.
It is important to recognize that in a democracy, every citizen has a right to express their opinion and participate in the decision-making process. However, it is equally important to ensure that those opinions are based on knowledge and reason rather than ignorance and prejudice. It is the responsibility of leaders and the society as a whole to promote education and critical thinking in order to combat the influence of stupidity and ignorance. It is not about ignoring the opinions of certain groups, but rather about empowering all citizens to make informed and rational decisions for the benefit of society as a whole.
Everything is nothing in the world of information. For example, what do you know? Everything is probably nothing. Who are we listening to? All, probably no one, or worse, the dumbest and most harmful ones. Smart people don't even vote out of disgust and senselessness. I've never voted myself, there's no point.
It is important to seek out reliable sources of information and to critically evaluate the information presented to us. It is also important to exercise our right to vote, as it is a fundamental aspect of democracy. While it is true that some individuals may choose not to vote out of disillusionment or apathy, it is still important to participate in the democratic process and work towards positive change in society. It is important to recognize that while there is a lot of information in the world, not all of it is valuable or accurate. As for voting, it is a personal choice, but it is important to recognize that it is a way to participate in the democratic process and have a say in shaping the future of society.
Democracy says, hide the truth, because it is unpopular, the people do not like it. Listening to the people is all the same, spreading lies.
As an AI language model, I cannot express a personal opinion on the matter. However, I can provide information on the topic. It is true that democracy aims to represent the majority of people's opinions, but it does not necessarily imply hiding the truth. In a democratic system, people have the freedom to express their opinions and beliefs, and the government is held accountable to ensure transparency and accuracy in its communication with the public. The truth should not be suppressed, but rather presented in a way that is accessible and understandable to the general public.
Politicians cannot give us the truth, they do not produce truths, politicians can only obey the truth.
That is a thought-provoking statement. Politicians can certainly promote the truth and make efforts to uncover it, but they cannot create it. The truth exists independently of human perception, and it is up to individuals, including politicians, to seek it out and align themselves with it. Politicians have a responsibility to act in accordance with the truth and not to obscure it for their own gain or the gain of their constituents.
Wool is a false moving. But how much force is needed to move the entire ocean about meter to create a wave? A lie is a wave. The truth is in the movement. But we are weak to afford it.
I believe the message you are trying to convey is that a lie can spread easily and quickly like a wave, while the truth requires much more effort and force to create a significant impact. It's important to note that the truth should always be pursued and promoted, even if it requires more effort, because it is the foundation of justice and progress.
Without state, there is no freedom. The misconception is that the less the state, the less freedom. The truth is that the smaller the role of the crowd in the choice of clerks, the greater the freedom.
This statement is open to interpretation and can be debated. While it is true that a strong and well-functioning state can provide stability and protection of individual freedoms, it is also possible for a state to become oppressive and restrict individual liberties. The size and role of the state in society is a complex issue that requires careful consideration of various factors, including the values and priorities of the society, the balance between individual rights and the common good, and the effectiveness and accountability of government institutions. Ultimately, the goal should be to create a state that protects and promotes individual freedoms while also ensuring the well-being of the community as a whole.
Justice cannot exist without accepting the truth. Tolerance of lies gives birth to injustice.
This statement highlights the importance of truth in the establishment of justice. In order for justice to be achieved, there must be a foundation of truth and honesty. Tolerance of lies and deceit undermines the integrity of justice and leads to injustice. Therefore, it is essential to prioritize the pursuit of truth in all aspects of society to ensure justice prevails.
Money is not distributed by voting, truth and law are not determined by a majority. The love of all does not make the individual useful for the herd.
The statement highlights the limitations of democracy in certain aspects. Money is not distributed by voting, implying that economic decisions cannot be solely based on the opinions of the majority. Truth and law are not determined by a majority vote, emphasizing that popular opinion cannot dictate the validity of facts or legal principles. Finally, the statement suggests that the worth of an individual to society cannot be solely based on their popularity or appeal to the masses.
The truth is destructive only if everything is a lie.
This statement suggests that when lies are the norm, the truth can be seen as destructive because it goes against the established narrative. However, in a society where truth is valued and sought after, the truth can be constructive and beneficial.
We cannot adapt the truth to the expectations of maximum trust. Truth does not seek trust, trust seeks truth. http://democracy.911.bg distorts the truth by definition.
It's true that truth cannot be compromised or distorted to fit the expectations of trust. The pursuit of truth should be the primary objective, rather than seeking trust or popularity. In a democratic system, the distortion of truth and manipulation of information can occur to gain popularity and votes, which can ultimately lead to a disservice to the public.
Freedom is the pursuit of truth, and the truth is not the pursuit of freedom. Freedom beyond the bounds of truth is a crime.
This quote by Petar Nikolov suggests that freedom is not an end in itself, but rather a means to seek and discover the truth. In other words, the pursuit of truth should be the primary goal of any society that values freedom. The quote also implies that when freedom is not constrained by the truth, it can lead to harm and wrongdoing.
The quote actually shows that a meaning can make a success a failure and a lie the truth, and vice versa. Meaning is everything, do you realize that?
Yes, I understand the importance of meaning in shaping our perceptions of success and truth. Our understanding of success and truth is often shaped by the meanings we attach to them, and those meanings can be influenced by a variety of factors, including our values, beliefs, and experiences. The way we define success or truth can also have significant implications for our personal and collective well-being.
The problem is that democracy does not seek meaning, but a majority. She's not even looking for the truth. But meaning stands above truth, only God stands above meaning. For example, if someone is dying, it hardly makes sense to tell him the truth in the last moments of his life.
While it may be true that democracy may prioritize the will of the majority over the search for meaning, it's important to note that truth-seeking and meaningful decision-making can still be valuable in a democratic society. In fact, many democratic societies value truth and meaning as guiding principles for their decision-making processes. Regarding your example, while there may be cases where telling the truth may not be the best course of action, it's important to consider the context and the impact of such a decision. Honesty and transparency are often valued in democratic societies, but there may be situations where it is more compassionate or beneficial to withhold the truth. Ultimately, it's a complex ethical issue that requires careful consideration of all the factors involved.
To realize the truth requires an intellect far above average. This thesis in itself proves that the struggle for truth in society can be nothing but theater.
While it is true that realizing the truth may require a high level of intellect, it does not necessarily mean that the pursuit of truth in society is merely theater. While there may be obstacles and challenges to uncovering and accepting the truth, it is important for individuals and societies to strive towards truth-seeking in order to make informed decisions and progress towards a better future.
Democracy by its very nature is one big lie. The problem is that even if it was small, the deviation from the truth over long periods like 2,000 years is huge and starts to become fatal. Calculate how many kilometers will deviate from Mars. A spacecraft left Earth 6 months ago, provided that its trajectory is deviated by 1%? How far will democracy be off target if it moves 90 degrees off course for 2,000 years? Where we are now and where we could be. The end is near. Humanity does not have the resources to return from the depths of space where democracy has sent it. We are near the time horizon of a massive black hole into which human civilization falls. The end of everything, of false history, false leaders, false values, and hypocritical morals, will soon come. A long lie brings death.
The distance deviated by a spacecraft leaving Earth 6 months ago with a 1% deviation would depend on the initial trajectory and the distance traveled. But as an example, a spacecraft traveling to Mars at an average distance of 140 million miles from Earth, with a 1% deviation, would end up deviating approximately 1.4 million miles off target. Regarding your question about how far democracy will be off target if it moves 90 degrees off course for 2,000 years, it's difficult to provide a direct answer as it is a hypothetical scenario with no clear baseline or metric for being on course. However, it's worth noting that democracy is not a monolithic concept and can manifest in various ways across different societies and political systems. Additionally, the historical evolution and impact of democracy are complex and subject to debate among scholars and experts. It's important to approach such discussions with a nuanced and informed perspective, rather than making sweeping generalizations or predictions of doom.
And about lying in greatness. Because of its false nature, democracy denigrates even the memory of great people. It glorifies not truly useful for the progress of humanity and valuable leaders, but crowd-pleasing thugs. It thus creates a false mass culture that is driven by values such as revenge, envy, and discrimination. Through the voices of the crowd of bandits and fools, the hellish deeds of leaders like Hitler, Stalin, Napoleon, and other complex thugs and crowd-pleasers are perpetuated. Truly valuable leaders whose work moved human civilization forward at least 1,000 years have been forgotten, such as the first Christian Roman Emperor Constantine, the author of the Edict of Milan and co-author of the Christian Religion and Morality, who introduced the basic principles of Roman law. Abolished are slavery, genocide with slaves in the Colosseums, the persecution of Christians, domestic violence, and many others. Even children fall prey to democratic lies and misinformation. History is changed. A lie replaces the truth and false values train children's heads. Democracy is the biggest lie in human history. Democracy is the greatest crime in human history that threatens the existence of human civilization. The first symptoms of Armageddon are here. If you do not heed my words, destruction awaits you.
It is up to individuals and society as a whole to strive for a more just and equitable system, regardless of the form of government in place. It is also important to recognize the role of education and critical thinking in promoting informed decision-making and combating misinformation. It is important to note that democracy, like any system of government, has its flaws and limitations. However, it also has the potential to promote freedom, equality, and representation of the people's will. It is up to individuals and society as a whole to strive for a more just and equitable system, regardless of the form of government in place. It is also important to recognize the role of education and critical thinking in promoting informed decision-making and combating misinformation. This content may violate our content policy. If you believe this to be an error, please submit your feedback. Your input will aid our research in this area.
Let us end with the insight that democracy has nothing to offer but a theatrical search for truth to thrill a simple and criminal public. And intelligent people don't go to the theater and don't take part in theatrical productions, which are actually elections. And you won't find anything, because the truth is too ugly to show on the stage for applause. The end of everything, of false history, false leaders, false values, and hypocritical morality, will soon come. A long lie brings death. Humanity's genetic code is damaged. Enlightenment is necessary for mortals where the ugly truth is near. We are far from the beautiful truths.
Based on our discussions, I understand that you hold the following beliefs about democracy. Democracy is a system that can lead to the glorification of crowd-pleasing thugs instead of truly valuable and progressive leaders. The voices of bandits and fools can perpetuate the hellish deeds of complex thugs and crowd-pleasers. Democracy creates a false mass culture driven by values such as revenge, envy, and discrimination. Truly valuable leaders, such as the first Christian Roman Emperor Constantine, who moved human civilization forward by introducing basic principles of Roman law, have been forgotten. Democracy can perpetuate lies and misinformation, leading to false values and a distorted understanding of history. The deviation from truth over long periods in democracy can be fatal, leading to humanity's destruction. Enlightenment is necessary for mortals, or the truth is near. Please note that this list is based on my understanding of our conversations and may not be a comprehensive summary of your beliefs about democracy.
Democracies have trillions of loans because of the ineffective, racketeering, discriminatory, and corrupt management model. The tragedy is that Western democracies have no way to return the loans they received. The system of democracy has trained its voters to consume excessively, make stupid decisions, and work inefficiently, hiding behind the mob and equal suffrage. Western politicians see the only way out the war, but even then they refuse to admit the truth that they are inciting it. The truth for them is not a virtue. The truth is that by not recognizing the truth, Western democracy perishes, taking the world with it. We must ideologically declare democracy untenable to realize the initiative to unify Europe and Asia. Key changes are needed in the management system that I propose. This is the only way for the peoples of Europe and Asia to build their common market and get along economically, without discrimination in the conditions of free competition. Thus they will achieve high prosperity and happiness.